Alright, hello YouTube. Random viewers who don't really have any good reason to be here, and potential future time travelers, and legitimate past time travelers. In which case, hello. I would like to speak to you very much. Anyway, this is Starsector. Now, this is my third take on the video, and it's been an adventure. The first take I absolutely knackered. I was off topic. I went all over the place and really just didn't do it very well at all. And then the second take, I decided I needed a script of some sort. So I had one set up on my phone, I had it set up in front of me, and as I was recording, ants come out of fucking nowhere and attack my phone, trying to eat the screen protector or some shit. It was really annoying because I really couldn't do anything about them because I'm recording. Anyway, then I finally get through the second video, which actually went much better than the first take. I had about 40 minutes of solid footage, until I went to review it and found out that my microphone was not recording at any part in that video. So this is my third take, and here's hoping that third time's the charm. So, this is Starsector. This is an indie game in development by Fractal Softworks. Now, Fractal Softworks is one of those companies that isn't so much an actual company as they are just kind of a name associated with, like, one or two people so that they can publish a game that they've really been working on as kind of a labor of love. And it is currently in early access. Starsector 0.65.2a. That is the current version. It is very early, and as such, there are a lot of features that are kind of missing. Now, as you can see in the background here, this is a 2D sprite-based game. The sprites are fairly high resolution, as you should be able to see. There's a lot of detail to them, and if you add in mods, you can get some even more high-quality sprites. Now, I don't think I'd like... If I make reviewing games a regular thing I do, I don't think I'd like to cover this all the time, but I think this warrants here, because if we look at the options, you can see that there is nothing here. There's nothing. You have damage taken by your ship, half or full. I'm not even sure if this does anything, but if it does, well, it's kind of awkward to think that you can just effectively make your own ship overpowered. Floating text. Enable or disable floating text. This shows how much damage you're doing, what systems you've disabled. It's generally helpful. Different sound volumes, battle size, tooltip delay. There are no graphics options. None. None whatsoever. There's also no difficulty options. Starsector has a flat difficulty. I mean, sure, well, I'll show you. Here, this is the character creation screen. So let's pick ourselves a portrait. I like this guy. So we can choose Iron Mode, which is exactly what it says on the tin, as an Iron Man mode. If you've played XCOM or anything like that, you know how Iron Man mode works. Every time you leave the game, it automatically saves. And so you cannot load any save except for your latest one. And there's also help pop-ups, which I will disable because, frankly, once you're familiar with the game, they just kind of get in the way. So, I am Surge. Now, here we choose our character background. You can technically be any of these things: an honest trader, a smuggler, a bounty hunter, and there are going to be more options in the final version of this game, such as mining and, hopefully, industrialist. You know, manufacturing ships and weapons, and that'll be very interesting, but all those industrial features are not yet in the game. An honest trader is, well, I don't know if they're going to rebalance trading, but as it is now, you're looking at very thin profit margins as a trader because of tariffs, mostly. And as a smuggler, it's kind of difficult because they don't have any really good ways to sneak around right now. And being able to sneak into ports will be very important to smugglers. So we're going to pick Bounty Hunter, because that is by and far the most lucrative. And here we can choose further background. We can get a cash bonus, we can get a special weapon to fit our ship with, or we can get some experienced crew. Now, for the purpose of this video, I'm going to take the high-end weapon. We get a heavy blaster. Excuse me. And also for the purpose of this video, I'm going to take the easier start, just to speed things up. Because the start of this game is very slow. In fact, it doesn't really pick up pace until very late in the game, where you have enough ships to simply take on anything. So, the easier start gives me a destroyer to start with, and enough crew, supplies, and fuel for it. I'm going to take manual assignment for my starting skills, so that is 2 aptitude points and 4 skill points. Now let's take a look at the skill trees. You can see the industry tree down here is completely empty. It's because it has not yet been added in. Now there are 3 other trees: combat, leadership, and technology. Leveling up, putting aptitude points into either of these unlocks new levels of your skills. You see, I can't level any of these skills right now because I do not have any aptitude points in any of these trees. Aptitude points also come with their own bonuses. For example, if I put an aptitude point in technology, I get a 1% ordnance point bonus. You can see it up there. And we'll talk about ordnance points in a moment. So I'm going to put both of my aptitude points into technology, and I'm going to immediately skill up navigation. As you can see here, it increases maximum burn. That is how fast my fleet travels, you know, as a fleet. Not necessarily on the battlefield, just as a fleet. There's other skills that do all kinds of different things. You can get ordnance point bonuses, venting bonuses, top speed bonuses. Basically, technology is all about building your ships better right from the start. Or, you know, you get capacitor, venting, and ordnance point bonuses, as well as even an armor bonus. Technology is all about the construction side of things. You know, if you invest a lot in technology, you'll see these benefits mostly in your fleet management and refitting screen. And if you scale up in leadership, you'll see all of these benefits in your well, you'll see these benefits in a lot of different places, I should say. You see, command points is an interesting system. Instead of just letting you do whatever and play it as an RTS, Starsector forces you to give only important and essential commands to your fleet. Because via command points, whenever you issue an order, it expends command points, and that once you run out of command points, you can't give any more orders to your ships. They have to get by on their own, which they will definitely try to. Crew experience gained, self-explanatory. Your crew will rank up from green to veteran to elite, etc., faster. Maximum logistics capacity is another thing that warrants explaining, because maximum logistics capacity is how many ships you can have in your fleet total. The higher your maximum logistics capacity, the more ships you can have in your fleet at a time. And so I'm also going to put some skills in construction. And I'm not going to talk about all of the technology or combat trees because that would take too long. So we're just going to move on. And this is the only loading screen you're going to see in this game. Okay, this and the loading screen for when you're starting the game up for the first time, well, in that session anyway, those are the only loading screens you see. All the battles, no loading. So this is our sector map. We'll talk about that in a second. I'm going to show you the refitting screen first. This is what the refitting screen looks like. You can see that each of your ships has a certain number of slots that we can put things into. For example, if I take this phase lance, I can replace it with a heavy blaster. But I don't have enough ordnance points because the phase lance costs 10 and the heavy blaster costs 12. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a vent off and I'm going to put a heavy blaster on. Now these up here, these vents and capacitors, these are very important. There's a lot of numbers at work that I won't really bore you guys with. I'll let you figure them out for yourself. If you don't want to play with the numbers, you can of course pick default variants. Now, capacitors affect how much flux, which is the game's equivalent of heat, how much flux your ship can soak up from weapons fire from both ends, because taking hits to your shields generates flux. And capacitors affect how much flux your ship can soak up before its systems overload, and all your weapons and shields shut down. And vents affect how fast you can get rid of flux. So you can see that there are blue circles here. These are for energy weapons. There are green diamonds for missiles. And over here there is a yellow square for ballistics. There are also universal slots that you can mount anything in, but we don't have any ships with one of those. So I'm going to add a capacitor to my hammerhead here. And let's take a look at hull modifications. You see that my hammerhead has expanded missile racks that increase the ammo capacity of its missiles. So that's these Sabo SRMs here. And you can see that there are a few hull modifications to be seen here. There aren't very many, and there will be a lot more later in the game once I scale up the technology tree more. But each of these hull modifications allows me to refine and customize the way that my ship functions. Accelerated shields increases the rate at which my shields go up. And if I have Omni shields, which cover less area but can be rotated around the ship, then it increases the rate at which they turn. Armored weapon mounts makes it harder for the enemy to knock out my guns, but makes my guns slower. It also increases the ship's overall armor. Unstable injector increases my ship's speed and in acceleration, but my engines take more damage in combat. So, let's next take a look at the fleet management screen. This is our fleet. It's not very impressive, I know. Now, you can see my little icon here. This means that this ship is designated as my flagship. You can see that here, designate flagship. This means that in combat, I have personal control over this Wolf class. Now, if I click this, I now have personal command over the Hammerhead in combat. And, I can also move these ships around. This is useful because if I have, say, enough elite crew to fully man my Wolf class here, but not my Hammerhead, because the Hammerhead requires 100 crewmen to the Wolf's 30. If I move the Wolf over here, it suddenly has priority on higher ranking crewmen, so it gets all the benefits of having a completely elite crew, much sooner than the Hammerhead would have gotten it. Otherwise, moving them around is purely for organizational purposes. Then, there is cargo management. This is where we can see our supplies. Now, every ship in your fleet, you can see down here, every ship in your fleet uses up a certain number of supplies. The more ships and crew that you have, the more supplies that you'll use up per day. I'm using 6.9 supplies per day. And this is partly because I am currently attempting to regain combat readiness. Now, combat readiness, let's go back here, is a measure of how effective your ship is in combat, sort of. It's an overall effectiveness of all of your ship's systems. If your ship's combat readiness is low, then wear and tear and crew fatigue, they're seriously impacting the way your ship performs. And past a certain threshold, they start to damage the mechanical integrity of your ship, and you'll have system failures in combat without the enemy even causing them, which is really bad. So generally, you want to go to the trouble of keeping your combat readiness high. But keeping your combat readiness high takes up supplies. And once you run out of supplies, your combat readiness will start to degrade. And if you go long enough without any supplies, your ships will start to lose combat readiness in chunks. Then you'll start losing cargo and crew. Then you'll start losing entire ships. You need to keep supplies in your cargo hold. Fuel is also important. Fuel is used to travel between star systems, and is the only time it's expended. It also has a separate storage area from your regular supplies and general cargo, like this phase lance. This phase lance, as you can see here, it takes up 4 cargo space. That is 4 of 150 slots in my cargo bay being taken up by this, and it shares the cargo bay with all my supplies. My crew also has their own storage, obviously. They do not sleep in the cargo bay or anything like that. And now the map. If you press tab or press this little button down here, you can bring up a map of the system. And here we can see there's some pirate fleets down here at Somnus. As all the planets are marked in colors, and the color of the planet name shows who owns it. For example, these planets, their names are red because they are owned by the pirates. Similarly, these red fleets, also pirates. This gray name means it's an independent planet. This blue name means it's an uninhabited body. It might be a gas giant, a completely uninhabitable planet. Orange means hegemony. This little green thing here is a Ludic fleet. And if we press tab again, we can go back here. Now I'm going to unpause the game and fly around for a bit. And so you can see that there are all these other fleets moving around, and the fleets are basically just represented by this little colored circle with an arrow denoting its heading, and all of the ships in that fleet are visible within that circle. See, I've been flagged down for inspection here by Hegemony Patrol. This is a thing that happens completely randomly when you fly around. The Imperial factions will not always, they'll randomly flag you down for customs inspections, which is used to prevent smuggling. So you can allow the scan to proceed, or you can refuse, and they will generally immediately become hostile. I have never seen them not become hostile if you refuse an inspection. So, here we can see that they're tolling me. This is effectively for their time. You see, you pay a cargo toll based on how much you're carrying, and a fleet size toll based on how many ships you have. And this is another reason that the game is really hard on traders right now. So I can pay the toll, it's 1,500 credits, or I can refuse to pay, again, which makes them hostile. But if I don't have the money in the first place, I can take a reputation hit instead of immediately just attacking them. Now, paying it does increase my reputation with them. You see, my relationship with the hegemony has improved by 1. So I'm going to leave and go check out Jengala here. Now, this is our market screen. You can see there are all these different items for sale here. There are trading goods, rare metals, volatiles, organics, food. There's some crew for sale, varying ranks. Then, there are also some weapons here. Some Pylum LRMs, Arbalest autocannons, supplies, fuel. There's also tabs down here. Open Market, Hegemony Military, and Black Market. Now, I can't access the Hegemony Military tab yet, because my reputation with the Hegemony isn't high enough. Once your reputation with the various factions gets high enough, you can go to certain stations and access their military tab, which will allow you to buy more weapons than what you'd find on the open market, as well as more dedicated warships than you'll find on the open market. I can also go to the black market. You can see there are more weapons here, which is generally a feature of the black market. You'll find weapons that are otherwise hard to find or not available. You'll always find a handful of supplies and fuel in case you find yourself on a planet that doesn't have very many, if any, of either, and you desperately need some. And there's also these hand weapons and harvested organs. Now, these are contraband. If I were to buy one of these, I would not be able to sell it on the open market. In fact, let me buy a hand weapon here to show you right now. If I go to the open market, it is now red. I cannot sell it. It is illegal to trade on the open market. Now, hand weapons are interesting because you technically can just buy them from the Hegemony military, but that's okay. They're still contraband. If you want to sell them back, you still have to go to the black market. So we can also buy ships here in the same manner. The Hegemony military would offer up warships. The open market offers up shuttles, these construction rigs, freighters, and a tug. And the black market offers up a few warships. But you'll notice that a lot of these ships are noted with a D next to their name. That means that they're decommissioned. The pirates have essentially salvaged these ships that were in more or less unsalvageable state, and they've done their best to restore them to working order. But these ships will never quite be the same. They just can't be restored fully to the way they once were. And it shows. For example, this mule class here, this decommissioned mule class, if we look at its hull mods here in this info card, we can see that it has a shielded cargo hold, which is typical of the pirate freighters. This means that it's more difficult for customs inspections to detect contraband in your hull, And we can also see that it has compromised armor and a faulty power grid. That means it suffers penalties to its armor rating, flux capacity, and flux dissipation. However, decommissioned ships are always cheaper. Ships on the black market are cheaper in general because the black market doesn't have any of the tariffs that the open market has. But trading on the black market will damage your reputation with the faction that owns that planet. And if you make bulk purchases on the black market, which can include buying large ships on the black market, there's a chance that the faction will launch an investigation into the recent smuggling. And if they find you guilty, they'll revoke your docking privileges instantly. So, generally you don't want to buy decommissioned ships unless you're in a pinch and you can't afford anything better. However, we are not currently in a pinch right now, so we're not going to buy one. Now, I would go and find a fleet to battle to show you how the combat works, but it can be kind of difficult to find a good fleet to fight, especially early on when you have such a small fleet yourself. So I'm going to use the refitting screens simulation. And I'm going to bring up our allied wolf, and then for opponents, I'm going to deploy these two lashers, this brawler, and a mule. Now this is going to be the fleet that we're going to fight. So, normally our fleet would fly in from the bottom of the map here. And if this were a pursuit mission, which is where the enemy is attempting to disengage and you're trying not to let them, we would be able to spawn our frigates and fighters in on the sides here to try and cut them off. There would also be a few objectives scattered around the map, such as sensor arrays that give weapon damage boosts, and nav buoys that gives movement speed boosts. Capturing these objectives can turn the tide of battle, but it can also stretch your forces out very thin, and you have to make a careful decision what you want to do. So we can see that the enemy ship has launched some missiles. These are actually EMP missiles. Whatever they hit gets knocked out. And so you have to be careful to try and dodge or shoot them down. Now, every ship in this game has a special ability. You may have noticed my Wolf class teleporting around a bit there back. And the glow that kind of appeared on that Brawler's guns. And that's because the Brawler and my Hammerhead both have the same ability. They have what's called the Accelerated Ammo Feeder. This increases the rate of fire of all ballistic weapons on the ship, as you can see in action here. And you can also see our flux rates building rapidly as we fire. So, now this may not have been the best matchup because you can see that we're losing bad, really bad. But it's just a simulation, so I don't actually stand to lose anything. See, I've just overloaded my Hammerhead here. My shields are now down for however many seconds the overload lasts, and I can't use my weapons. So I'm going to vent real quick. This is a really bad place to vent with that Brawler attacking me, but I don't feel like I have a choice here. And I've been hit by those EMP missiles, so my engines are now down. And there I go. Now note that my Hammerhead's wreck is still here, and that wreck will persist throughout the entire battle until it takes enough damage to completely destroy it. Also note that if the enemy were close enough to my ship when it were destroyed and they didn't have their shields up, they had a very real chance of being destroyed themselves. So I'm going to end the simulation now. And now I'm going to look at some stuff back on the main menu. So I'm going to back out without saving, and let's take a look at missions. Now, missions are pre-made combat. They are pre-made scenarios, as we can see here. This mission, difficulty medium, and this is my fleet. I can go in and refit them with anything I want, anything at all. All the hull mods are available here. It's great. Money is no object, and here is the enemy fleet. And there are usually some objectives or some gimmick. Oh, sorry. So for example, here it says that the ESS Indomitable, that's my flagship here, it must survive. And here we have very limited command points, such and such and such. And they also generally give you some kind of tips, like capture all enemy objectives to stop the enemy from bringing in reinforcements, or something like that. And ignore this. These are some graphics mod stuff. You see, mods will generally add missions, and I've taken out all of my content adding mods. So none of my mods add any content, which we're gonna take a look at all the content in here now through the Codex, which is effectively a comprehensive list of all the ships, variants, fighters, weapons, and special abilities in the game. It doesn't cover hull mods quite as well as it possibly could, but as a resource for looking at ships and variants and even weapons, it's very good. So you should probably get used to looking up things in the Codex at first, once you're still getting familiar with everything. And then, now I want to talk about mods. Mods are great. Starsector runs in Java, and presumably because of this, it's very easy to mod. It is ridiculously easy to mod, actually. In fact, if you go to the forums and look at their mods, you can find all kinds of stuff that is practically massive. You know, most mods will add an entire new faction with all the ships and weapons that comes with, which is not an insignificant number. And it's mostly a matter of getting everything into the game in the first place and making the sprites. So, you know, once you've... Well, I suppose that's how it works with any mod. I'll just stop talking about things I don't know about, but it's very simple, obviously, as a lot of people do it, and there's a lot of really great mods out there. You can effectively quintuple the amount of content in the game with a handful of intercompatible mods that add new factions, change how the game works. It's just great. I highly recommend, if you get this game, that you mod it heavily, because you will not regret it. So anyway, this is Starsector, and I apologize for yawning like that. I haven't been sleeping well very lately, but anyway, this is Starsector. It is available on Fractal Softworks' website for $15. It is not currently on Steam. It may release on Steam once it is complete, but for now it is at $15, which is $10 less than they want to charge for it. So they are effectively letting you pay less to play half a game. And once the game releases, if you buy the game now, you'll still get the full copy, but you'll still save $10. Everyone else who buys the release version will have to pay the full $25. However, because it's not available on Steam or Amazon or anything like that, you will have to go through a third-party payment service to get it. So, if you don't trust those, you might not wish to buy Starsector. However, I do highly recommend it. It may not have multiplayer, but it's a solid single-player experience, and you can lose all kinds of hours to it. So, that will be the video for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.